Ferrari is preparing for the 2025 Formula One season. It has already completed 2 tests in Fiorano and Barcelona with the SF-23 single-seater, while waiting to hit the track in Bahrain with the new car, in which it has placed significant hopes. The goal is to fight at the top and finally remove that annoying 0 from the championship title tally. The last time the Italian side won anything was back in 2008. With just over a year to go until the regulatory revolution that will completely change the top tier of motorsport, the Maranello team had to make precise design choices: continuity or a change in approach. This question will only be answered at the Bahrain International Circuit in Sakhir during the 3 crucial days of pre-season testing for the 2025 Formula One campaign. Meanwhile, speculation continues regarding the suspension characteristics of the SF-25. According to general opinion, Ferrari's latest creation will feature a pull rod front suspension, aligning with Red Bull and McLaren. And this could indeed be the case, although at this moment we cannot rule out the opposite either. What is certain is who has already decided not to adopt this solution, albeit for reasons different from what one might assume. In Formula One, there is a collaboration between Ferrari and Haas, which, at least for the 2025 season, will be somewhat different. In other words, we can state with certainty that the American team's technical department has decided to continue using Ferrari's 2024 suspension model in the next championship. As team principal Ayao Komatsu explained, they chose not to purchase the latest version of the Prancing Horse's front suspension setup. The Japanese team principal did not add much more to these statements, leaving room for various interpretations. The most common argument supports a change for the Italian team, which could switch to a pull rod front suspension. We have dedicated a detailed video to this topic, analyzing the various potential benefits and risks of such a decision. First of all, it must be clarified that pushrod and pull-rod systems are kinematically equivalent. There is no logical reason why one setup should be mechanically more advantageous than the other. The initial choice between a pushrod or pull-rod system is dictated solely by the aerodynamic department. But let's take a look at the timing behind Haas's decision. The group of engineers studying fluid dynamics determines the position of the suspension arms, and based on that, the designers then define an effective kinematic setup, both structurally and in terms of compliance. The suspension dynamics must therefore adapt to the choices of each team's core department, its aerodynamics division. Haas, however, seems to have taken a different approach. It is well known how crucial kinematics are to optimizing the car's floor performance. At the rear, the interaction between aerodynamics and mechanics is fundamental. However, even at the front, controlling ride height is a key parameter for fluid dynamics. According to what has been reported by various Italian news media outlets, Haas decided not to take the risk of purchasing Ferrari's 2025 suspension version because they did not know exactly when the first details about the new product would arrive. It is worth remembering that every year, the Italian team updates internal components as part of necessary development. Such information is crucial for defining the project. Primarily, this concerns packaging constraints, but also the characteristics related to the response of the elements themselves, ensuring proper work on ride height control for managing airflow. It is therefore necessary to simulate the behavior of various components to then calculate the level of oscillation of the suspension mounted on the 2025 car. The effect of these elements differs from car to car, depending on several factors. This is why Haas, rather than making a radical front-end change, stuck with the 2024 specification to avoid delays in receiving data and the product itself from Ferrari. The real risk was ending up with too little time to study the car's dynamic behavior, negatively impacting aerodynamics. The path of continuity was chosen to allow more time for studying aeromechanical interactions and expanding the aerodynamic map. On balance, retaining the 2024 suspension elements was less of a drawback than ensuring the floor worked within the correct operating window. This way, they can rule out potential negative aerodynamic consequences. We do not rule out that the SF-25 may adopt a pull rod front suspension. However, the American team's decision is not an obvious indication of Ferrari's choices. Moreover, considering the important technical partnership recently established with Toyota, Haas is gradually distancing itself from the Italian team, even though it still maintains a satellite office within Ferrari's Maranello headquarters. There is also one final important factor that must be emphasized in this regard. Looking toward the future, particularly the regulatory changes coming for the 2026 Formula One season. Haas's decision to continue with Ferrari's 2024 suspension specification has nothing to do with the future regulations. The revolution introduced by the FIA forces teams to work in isolated compartments, diversifying their various projects. For this reason, it would be incorrect to assume that certain suspension choices for the championship starting in just over a month were made with the 2026 Formula One season in mind. Now let's also take a look at Ferrari's preparations in the next days. After the SF-23 tests in Barcelona as driver training, Ferrari will return to the track, specifically the Montmello circuit, for 2 days of testing scheduled by Pirelli for the development of the 2026 tires. On the Catalan circuit, McLaren will also be busy, having tested the new generation rain tires at Paul Ricard for the sole supplier. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri completed 840 kilometers with the MCL60, that is, the 2023 single-seater. Pirelli appeared very satisfied because for the first time, the wet weather tests were carried out under repeatable conditions, so the many data collected are valid for making useful comparisons to guide development, especially of the full rain tires, which have so far been the Achilles heel of the Italian company's excellent supply. While McLaren chose the MCL60 as its mule car, Ferrari has decided to use the SF-24, the car that won 5 races last year, finishing second in the Constructors' Championship. This choice is spot on because the 2024 car will not be usable except in this specific instance. On Tuesday the 4th and Wednesday the 5th, the two drivers, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, will be busy. The Englishman will return to the Spanish track where, last Wednesday morning, he had an accident in the final sector of the circuit, causing significant damage to the SF-23. The lengthy repair prevented Charles Leclerc from getting into the car that afternoon, but it did not stop Antonio Giovinazzi and Dino Beganovic from completing the work plan scheduled for the following day. The details of the crash were kept highly confidential, with efforts made to downplay the incident, even though the impact against the barriers was rather strong, causing, among other things, the breakage of the suspensions. The Ferrari that will be used in the Pirelli test will be a car substantially different from the one that ended the 2024 season. To accommodate the narrower tires, the Italian side's technicians had to modify both the front and rear suspensions and also reduce the aerodynamic load by at least 20%, which is the legislators' target for the agile single-seaters of 2026. It is quite evident that this test will not be at all indicative of the strengths and weaknesses of the SF-24. Lewis Hamilton, like Charles Leclerc, will have to perform a blind test. That is, he will follow a work program defined by Mario Isola's technicians, without knowing the compounds and constructions of the tires that will be used in experimental form. We know Lewis's idiosyncrasies during tests, but the 2-day Spanish session will be important to start evaluating the 2026 tires and to provide feedback to Loic Serra's technical staff about the driving sensations with the prototype tires. His feedback and that of Charles could prove invaluable in offering Ferrari's engineers useful insights for the design of Project 678. If setup adjustments are ruled out, following the decision to maintain a stable setup for the 2 days, Hamilton will have the opportunity to appreciate the qualities of the 06612 with the latest electronic management not only of the hybrid system, finding a better feel with the clutch release now that the telemetry has acquired all the data from his starts and other important parameters to be fine-tuned in detail.